The committee, we have our quorum and it's a little past 3:30, so I'd like to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. The first thing on the agenda is to see if there are any requests for bill introductions. Are there any? Seeing none, we'll move on. Today we're continuing our hearing on the Healthcare Stabilization Fund and the Kansas Guardianship Program. We will be making our recommendations on those specific budgets. So let's start with the Healthcare Stabilization Fund, and I would entertain a motion. Representative Clifford.
Chairman, I'd like to move to approve and forward the Healthcare Stabilization Fund Board of Governors budget for 23 and to 25, or 24 and 25.
Have a second. Representative Ballard, second. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none. All in favor of the Clifford motion to approve the Healthcare Stabilization Fund budget for fiscal year 24-25 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We will consider that approved. Next thing, Kansas Guardianship Program. Do we have a motion on that? Representative Ballard.
Thank you. It is, I think we found out yesterday that the director of over 30, almost 40 years will be retiring from this program, and this will be the last time I'll have the pleasure of making this motion. So I would like to move that we approve the Kansas Guardianship Program for fiscal year 24 and 25.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the Kansas Guardianship budget as submitted. Representative Rees seconds. Is there discussion on that motion from Representative Ballard? Seeing none. All in favor of the Ballard motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. We will consider the Kansas Guardianship Program budget approved, and we will forward that to appropriations. Okay, committee, we have another hearing today, and today we'll be hearing budgets on the Larned and Osawatomie State mental health hospitals. And to start this off, we'll have Dayton Lemunion from Legislative Research give us the analysis.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. You should have a budget analysis in front of you labeled State Institutions for Mental Health at the top. So the state institutions for mental health are Larned State Hospital, which houses the Psychiatric Services Program, Sexual Predator Treatment Program, and State Security Program. And then Osawatomie State Hospital, which houses Adair Acute Care, which is the CMS certified hospital on that campus, as well as beds under Osawatomie Hospital name. Osawatomie serves the eastern third of the state, and Larned serves the western 2/3 of the state. So in terms of the actual budget, I'd like to turn to page 7. This begins the fiscal year 2024 analysis. At the top of that page, you can see item 1 is an SGF reappropriation from the previous year of approximately $700,000. This brings the subtotal for the legislative approved by the previous legislature to $131.1 million, including $111.3 million SGF. Item 2 in the agency's revised estimate is the addition of a due process manager at Larned State Hospital. Larned requests $65,000 all SGF for salaries and wages to employ this position. The employee would provide residents with a mechanism to report issues related to the residents' care and treatment by overseeing the existing grievance officers. The second request is a request for $15.8 million, all state general fund. This request would fund the shortfall for the contract agency nursing staff. It would supplement $9.5 million in the base budget, as well as $16 million in Title 19 funds that were transferred from KDADS. Item 4 is the Larned State Hospital pay plan shortfall. This would implement the pay plan approved by last year's legislature. Item 5 is a request from Osawatomie State Hospital for $10.5 million, all SGF. This would cover a shortfall at Osawatomie for contract nursing staff. Item 6 is for the Osawatomie State Hospital pay plan shortfall. It's 436,000 SGF. And you see some other adjustments there. Item 7 is the 24/7 pay plan transfer. That is transferred from KDADS in the current year, and it will appear as a decrease in the next year in the hospital's budget. And item 8 there, you see Larned State Hospital Title 19 funds. These are the funds I previously referenced. Moving on, the governor's recommendation. The governor recommends expenditures totaling $181.9 million, including $144.7 million SGF. This is a decrease of $5.6 million below the agency's revised estimate. And this is due to the governor not recommending the adoption of the request for a due process manager, as well as partially recommending the Osawatomie request for nursing staff expenditures. Additionally, if you turn to the next page, you'll see that the governor recommends the deletion of 49 FTE positions. These are unfunded and unfilled. And I'm happy to stand for questions on 24.
Committee, questions for Dayton for fiscal year 24. Representative Droege.
On your last statement, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your last statement, the unfunded FTEs, are those nursing positions, or do you know what positions those are?
I couldn't say what they specifically are. I could look into that before tomorrow's recommendations. But they are unfilled and unfunded, so they're kind of just left over in the agency's count. So this is bringing their count more down to an accurate level of their full-time equivalent positions.
If they're having the contractual nurses, that's a very expensive way to get nursing. If it was unfilled nursing staff, is there a way that we could improve the filling of nursing staff?
Mr. Chair, Representative, I do know that they have a number of funded positions for nursing staff. Currently, their vacancy rate for those direct care positions, which would include the mental health, developmental disability tech, registered nurses and security at Larned is 55% vacancy for those positions, and Osawatomie is 49% vacancy. So those would sort of be separate from these unfilled and unfunded positions. And I'm sure the agency has more commentary on that.
Anything further, Representative Droege? Further questions on 24? Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a place to compare the traveler payments like for last year? Or do we have any historical opportunity to see where that's going? Is this decreasing or? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, Mr. Chair. It's not in the budget analysis. I do have these numbers here. So for Osawatomie, in fiscal year 2023, it was $16 million, which was an increase of 30% over the prior year. And then for this year, the estimate is $19 million, which would be an increase of 18% over fiscal year 23. So that's for Osawatomie. For Larned, in 23, it was $43.1 million, which was an increase of 52% over the prior year. And for 24, the estimate is $40.5 million, which is a decrease of 6.1% over 23. So for Larned, between those 2 years, a slight decrease there of $3 million and an increase at Osawatomie of $3 million.
Thank you. Thanks for being prepared to answer that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Dayton, for that. You knew I was going to ask that question, didn't you? And just for the committee's information, that's contract labor that we've paid over and above. So that's all contract labor, what he just mentioned there. $40 million. $43 million last year, $40 million this year at Larned.
Are you ready for me to move on to 25? Okay. On page 11, 2025 analysis. Item 1 is for Larned State Hospital Sexual Predator Treatment Program Deputy Superintendent. That would be 170,000 SGF. The agency reports that currently the superintendent of Larned directly oversees the sexual predator treatment program, as well as the state security program and the psychiatric services program. So this would employ a new position to oversee just that one program. Item 2 is a request for 130,000 SGF. This would employ a forensic evaluator for the sexual predator treatment program. The agency reports that currently there is one position, but due to modifications to the report, more residents are agreeing to engage in that report, resulting in an increased workload. So currently, the agency reports that the clinical program director and assistant clinical program director are assisting to meet demands. And then item 3 on the following page. Larned State Hospital requests primary medical care staff for the sexual predator treatment program. This would be one staff member who would assist in managing the medical needs of that program. The agency reports the population is aging and has more intensive needs. You can see at the end of item 3, the medical appointments have increased since 2021. Item 4 is Larned State Hospital Due Process Manager. This is a continuation of the request from the previous year. However, this would represent a full year's salary for that position. Next, item 5, Larned State Hospital contract nursing staff, a request of $31 million to increase the base budget. This would cover the entirety of the shortfall. This is higher than 2024 due to the unavailability of those Title 19 funds in the Larned budget. Next, item 6, Larned requests environmental services staff. This would be 6 positions. 4 of those would serve the sexual predator treatment program. The agency reports that previously these duties were carried out by resident workers. However, they've been restricted due to security concerns in that program. The additional 2 would maintain non-patient programs in other parts of the hospital. Next, item 7, again, Osawatomie requests $10.5 million for contract nursing staff. And finally, Osawatomie requests 500,000 SGF to fund improvements to the Biddle Courtyard for utilization of outdoor space. And if you turn to the next page, you'll see a couple of adjustments outside of the enhancements. Item 9 is the 24/7 pay plan transfer. You see a decrease there because that appears in the KDAD's budget for 2025. Additionally, you see the Title 19 funds that were available in the prior year, but not in 2025. And moving on to the governor's recommendation. The governor's recommendation is a reduction of $42 million, including $42 million SGF. This is primarily due to several enhancements that were not recommended. The deputy superintendent, primary medical care staff, due process manager, and contract nursing staff for both hospitals. Additionally, there is one enhancement that was partially recommended. There's a slight reduction there of $4,500 for the forensic evaluator. Next, item 13, the governor recommends swapping funding for the Biddle Courtyard from SGF to state institutions building funds. And finally, the governor continues the unfunded FTE reduction. And if you turn to the next page, you can see a list of those enhancements compared to the governor's recommendation. And I'm happy to stand for questions on 25.
Questions for Dayton on fiscal year 25, committee? Representative Carpenter.
I have one, and it might be better for the agency to ask this. So where is the money for the contract labor coming from? I mean, I know it's a Medicaid, well, it's Title 19, but that's Medicaid.
So it's transferred from KDAD's. They can certainly speak more to the specifics on that, but
that's fine. Thank you.
Committee, other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Dayton. Okay, next on the agenda then, we'll hear from the Deputy Secretary of Hospitals and Facilities, Scott Bruner. Welcome, Scott.
Sorry about that. Scott Bruner. with KDADS. I work with the 4 state hospitals, and I'm just going to do a couple of introductory slides before I have the superintendents come up and give their presentations. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. On the slides that you should have, just a couple on the background of the hospitals. So Larned and Osawatomie are 2 state hospitals that serve adults in acute mental illness and in crisis. And as Dayton said, they serve different regions of the state. Those catchment areas are defined in statute. And so as folks are screened by community mental health centers around the state, then if they're approved for a state hospital stay, they go to the hospital based on where they're screened. Larned's unique that it has a couple of other programs on the campus as well, the Sexual Predator Treatment Program that also Dayton mentioned, and the State Security Hospital that serves criminal defendants who are waiting for have their competency to stand trial either evaluated or restored, and then some folks stay there if they're not able to stand trial, and we provide treatment to them as well. And the superintendents will talk more about those programs as they get into their presentations. On slide number 4, just wanted to give you a very summary level view of the budgeted bed capacity in each of the programs and units on the 2 campuses and what our average census is. So far in this fiscal year, you can see in total we've got 712 beds that are funded in the budget, and our average census is around 552. And then the number of positions are there at the bottom. And you've already started talking about the position counts, but that number reflects the reduction that was in the governor's budget at Larned of positions that were literally counted in the budget but weren't funded and weren't positions that we were planning to fill. Slide 5 shows the turnover rate and vacancy rate. We provide this information to you every session to give you an idea of both the kind of volume of transition at Larned and Osawatomie as people turn over. Actually, those numbers are substantially better than they've been in the past, but our vacancy rate for all positions is still high. We can continue. So happy to answer more questions about vacancy rate by particular positions. And then the next couple of slides are just the budget totals that are in the governor's budget, and I won't go through that necessarily. Just Dayton's already gone through a high-level view of the numbers. The last comment I wanted to make is on slide 8. There are a couple of budget adjustments for the hospitals that are included in the KDAD's budget, so you won't see them in the budget you have today with the mental health hospitals and tomorrow with the hospitals for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But I did want you to be aware of it, that it's in the KDAD's budget, and as Dayton described over the past couple of years, the 24/7 pay plan that's been funded in the KDAD's budget, and then our responsibility is to transfer that money out to the hospitals to use to actually pay employees on the campuses. So those couple of enhancements are the governor's adjustments in employee pay. There's a 5% base pay adjustment for all state employees. It's included in her 2025 recommendation. There's also an adjustment to make the starting wage $15 an hour for state employees. So we do have folks on the campus, on all the campuses that make below that level, so they'll be brought up to $15 an hour. That's primarily our cooks and maintenance and custodial staff, and getting those wages up to that $15 an hour level will help with recruitment in those positions. And then finally, the governor recommended making the 24/7 pay plan differentials a permanent part. The pay plan had 4 differential tiers in it that are applied to hourly employees' wages. The first 3 of those are going to be are added to their base pay, and the 4th one will be a pool of funds to help meet some other requirements, either based on vacancy rate or the rural nature of the campus. So that's in the governor's budget as well. And then finally, the item that's in the KDAD's budget that impacts the hospitals is $690,000 from the state general fund for shoe and boot allowance for our safety and security officers and nursing staff. This is an addition that the governor made to the budget that is part of our negotiations with the Kansas Organization for State Employees, and we've been negotiating the memorandum of agreement with the union, other state agencies, the correctional facilities in particular help employees pay for required footwear and other kinds of clothing That wasn't the case at our state hospitals, but as part of the union negotiations, we've added that as a requirement for employees. And so if we're going to require them to have a certain kind of shoe or wear a certain kind of shoe that we direct, the governor added money into our budget so we can help subsidize that for employees. So again, that money will show up in the KDAD's budget when we review it, but the intent will be to distribute that out to the hospitals as appropriate. I'm happy to answer questions about that or let the superintendents do their presentations and then answer questions at the end.
Break right now and see if there are questions. Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might have missed it. The drop from 24 to 25 at both pages 6 and 7, is that a pay plan transfer change?
Pay plan transfer, and also at least the Larned budget was supplemented to pay agency contract nursing staff costs. That isn't reflected in the 24 budget or it is in the 24 budget with the recommendation. It's not in 25. There's a little adjustment there.
Other questions? Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have several questions. One on the food, the allowance on shoes and all that. So how does that work? Is it a stipend?
It's a per employee allowance of $250, and I need to look back at the agreement. If it's not every year, but I think it's every third year. And maybe we may have done it annually, but it's an allowance per employee, so they'll get an addition to their pay to cover those costs.
And you've negotiated this contract with the state employees union?
Yes.
So it's set in stone?
The agreement has not been ratified by the union or the bargaining units as of yet, but it is in the agreement that we negotiated with the union, and that's what they're planning to ratify or have go up for a membership vote in the next couple of months.
Okay. And then, you're ready for this. You knew I was going to ask this. So what are, I know there's authorized positions, but what are the actual positions at OSH? How many?
The number that I have is just our direct care staff. So let me bring those numbers back to you, what we've got filled, because I don't have all of the administrative staff. But we were asked last week to do a presentation for the Ways and Means Committee on contract staff costs and vacancy rates, and so we can pull that together pretty quickly and have it for you tomorrow.
Okay.
Or the superintendents may have it off the top of their heads. I'm not.
And they may. But it's always a lot less than what the authorized positions are.
Filled for sure, because of our vacancy rates are over 50% on both campuses. So in terms of active employees, it'll be half or less.
Yeah, and so those authorized positions kind of misleading when it talks to actual employees. I mean, I know you're authorized to have that many, but I don't remember a time when you've ever been fully staffed.
No, but a couple of points maybe to the other question that you asked of Dayton. So the vacancy rate, those are funded positions. So we have budget authority to fill those positions and pay those employees. When the positions are vacant, that money's used to pay either overtime costs for employees that we do have that are working, or redirected to pay the contract costs for agency staffing. So it's savings in the budget that you've authorized. You've given us an upper bound to spend. We're spending it on overtime and agency staff instead of employees because we don't have them to hire. And then we need to supplement that a little bit more too, which is in the budget request. But so there would always be some vacancy rate in the budget parlance. It's called shrinkage. So because there's turnover, so we always budget a little under what our authorized total would be. But you're 100% correct. We're significantly below what our effective shrinkage rate would be, or certainly not a full employment on the campus with all the positions.
Where the 43 million last year come from, and the 40 million this year have been coming from that the shrinkage.
We are getting, so you last year in the budget, you authorized, or the governor did a budget amendment, and you approved some additional funds to help us close the gap because we couldn't close it all with what was saved from shrinkage or not from having not all the positions filled. KDAS supplemented that sum as well with some one-time money that we had. And as Dayton said, we used Title 19 money. So if we're generating more Medicaid revenue than we expect, we've used that to cover the shortfall as well. But in combination, and we get to that total. But we included in the budget this year a supplemental request in the governor's process because we don't think we can close the gap on our own with just salary savings and what we're going to generate in Title 19.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Representative Beller, did you have a question?
Yes, I want to follow up on Representative Carpenter's question about the uniforms, only because people ask me, so this is a question from others, but I said I would ask. You just indicated $250 possibly every 3 years, or however they negotiate that.
I'll check.
Well, obviously, you'll know that they have them because you can see them on their feet. But will you also ask a receipt so that you know what you're paying? Or is this something that's recognized as part of uniforms and that's what you allow?
We don't do this today, but Corrections does. And my understanding at the Department of Corrections is that their shoe allowance it's added to a paycheck, the first one or the one in January at some point, so that it's added to the employee's pay. And then the employee is expected to wear footwear that meets the requirements of the agency. I don't know that we kind of have some standards, but again, we don't require it. We don't pay for particular footwear. So for safety and security officers, actually, we do have something that we mandate. So you'll be in uniform and you'll meet the standard, the requirements for footwear. If you're not, then we'll talk to the employee about that. But I imagine the mechanism for actually getting the money to employees will be adding it to one of their paychecks at some point in the pay cycle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that explanation. And I assumed that's how it was going to be done, but then I realized I'm not the one doing this, but you've explained it enough that I can explain it. Thank you very much.
Committee, other questions? Representative Droege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a question about contract nursing. It seems so expensive, and you would like to have permanent nurses. Is there any way that you guys in the business think to do this the contract nursing seems like a very expensive.
Oh, it is, Representative. So we keep all of our positions open. So if we post a nursing position, we have many positions posted in different units at different shifts so that people can apply for those. And then we fill as many of those positions as we can with applicants that we receive that meet the requirements. So we do keep those positions open. The superintendents will talk more about the efforts they've made to recruit folks. We do lots of online outreach, job fairs, word of mouth to try to get people just to apply. The problem is a couple of issues. One is we don't get a whole lot of applicants for some of the positions, particularly nursing and some of the clinical positions. So if we don't have an applicant, we can't hire them. That's a position we can't fill. But we still want to keep beds open so we can continue to serve people in Kansas and people in crisis. So we close that gap by working with a contract agency to bring us nurses and staff. But if we had applicants and qualified applicants, we'd hire them. And they're putting a lot of effort into trying to find more people to apply so we can get them hired and into full-time positions. The other factor that works against us is the wages that the nursing agencies pay their nurses or staff are often higher than what we can pay from the state. Plus, they can work maybe more flexible shifts, or they can come and work on our campus for a week and then go home and not work for 2 weeks and come back in another month or so. Much more flexible than we can allow and operate our hospital with our staff. So between the wages and kind of the flexibility of staffing, and there's some people who really enjoy that kind of I guess, mobile lifestyle where they go and work someplace, they put their time in, and then they go home for a month, and they're making enough money to make that work. So again, those are things that we can't match as well. We've tried, again, for recruiting. You've helped us quite a bit with pay rates as well, which we appreciate. So I think that's helping in the recruiting phase. And we've tried flexibility and shift and schedule as much as we can to say, if you don't want to work full-time, we have converted some positions to what we call 999 temps. So you can work less than a full-time schedule. Maybe it's a second job, or that works better for your family life. So we do try to make some accommodations there as well. But we're not making a lot of progress against agency staff costs that are $90 to $100 an hour. And they're not, the individuals aren't making that much, but that's what we're paying the agency, and our base pay is now up with the differentials around $42 an hour. So there's still a gap there.
Thank you for that. I realize it's a difficult problem. I just wanted to know more about it.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for the question.
Mr. Brenner, did I just understand you to say the difference between what you can pay and what the agencies pay is $42 per hour?
Our base starting wage for a nurse is right at $42 an hour with the differentials. What we pay the agency for a nurse is between 95 and 105, 95 and 105. So the employee's not getting all of that. Their agency is getting some overhead of that.
Contract agency is somewhere around 95. And
yes.
They're able to pay is around 42.
42 for a starting nurse, yes.
Okay. Has the agency done any kind of an analysis to see where you can start building your own employees and using contract less, or is that just an issue because of the remote nature of the hospitals, or what exactly?
The remote nature doesn't help. There aren't a lot of additional people to hire that haven't already worked for us or that would be qualified to work. So we've got to attract people from other parts of the state. We, Larned in particular, and again, Superintendent Dinkel can talk about this. We advertise pretty much from Wichita to Norton, and then the opposite diagonal to try to attract people to come and work and get hired on as a state employee, and do as much as we can with wages, again, with your help. But we just don't get a lot of applications. I mean, we hire people that are qualified. There are some other things about state employment that make it a little harder. You have to pass a criminal background check. We do a drug screen, and so sometimes that's an obstacle for some positions as well. But if we could find another source of employees, again, we need registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, people with credentials. Again, we've tried to grow our own, think about that, working with schools and technical colleges, community colleges, because those are available. But again, I think the pay plan, having that be permanent, we've been advertising the rates or the wages with all the differentials included, but now that it'll be permanent, that might have some other impact that people will see. That's not every year it might change. It's baked into the base pay.
Very good. Other questions, committee? Seeing none. Are you at the...
I'm going to transition to Lindsay Dinkel with Larned.
Yeah. Lindsay, welcome to committee.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman and committee, my name is Lindsay Dinkel. I am the superintendent at Larned State Hospital. Some of the other individuals here have introduced you to our 3 distinct programs that we have. I'm going to jump into slide 11 and talk a little bit more about each of the programs. Going into the psychiatric services program, again, that's our individuals that are coming in for acute stabilization. They're going through mental health ailments. We are budgeted to go up to 90 total beds, but again, because of those staffing shortages, we've had to cut that census down. We're currently functioning at a census rate of 74 patients at a time. So last year we had a total of 599 patients that were admitted into that program. 598 of them were discharged. So knowing that we have that cap of how many we can bring in at a time, we did face quite a bit of days throughout the year on a wait list. So the slide number 12 gives you some visual examples of what our wait list list looked like as far as number of patients that were waiting per month, the amount of days per month that we were on a wait list, and what those hours looked like from the time they were approved to screen in to when they came to us. So what the data is telling us is that we sat on a wait list about 46% of the time for 2023. Jumping into the slide 13, as was mentioned before, LSH does have a catchment area of 2/3 of the state. You'll see within these visuals here, Reno, Saline, and Ellis are our top counties where we typically receive our patients, but we also have a large variety of other counties where they're coming from. Transitioning to slide 19 goes into the state security program. Again, that's where the Kansas Code of Criminal Procedures are being enacted. So we've got patients coming to us for evaluations for competency restoration services, treatment in lieu of confinement. This program is budgeted for 140 beds. Again, falling into that staffing shortage challenge, we've had to cut those units back to a total of 100 beds that we can fill for that particular program, also resulting in quite a wait list that we've continued to battle. With the SSP program, we also have the Severe Security Behavior Unit, SBU. That's a 20-bed unit, and that one is where anyone who's screened into our PSP or our sister hospital, OSH, for those acute services, if they become a safety risk or their aggression that increases, we can administratively transfer them to SBU so we can stabilize them to where they're more safe, and then they'll go back to the less restrictive environment to get continued services. Transitioning into slide 15, that is where you see a visual of what our wait list was looking like in 2023. For the year, we essentially averaged out to about 184 males and females sitting on that SSP wait list. Going into the following slide gives you a visual example of what those number of days looked like from the time they were on the wait list to the time that they came in. Males on the left-hand side averaging about 425 days before we were able to get them in. On the right-hand side, females averaged about 40 days before they were able to come into our SSP program. Going to slide 17, SSP does not have a catchment area. We cover the entire state. So you'll get a little breakdown there of where most of our referrals came from as far as counties for the last year. Sedgwick, Shawnee, and Wyandotte is where we received the most of our patients last year. Finally, I'll go into slide 18, which talks about our sexual predator treatment program. These individuals have been civilly committed and meet the criteria for the Sexually Violent Predator Act. You'll see the second bulleted portion there breaks down where all of our residents are within that program. At the time the slides were made, we were sitting at 284. However, a couple weeks ago, we did have an anticipated passing of one of the residents, so we're sitting at 283 as of today. Going into slide 19, again, you'll see a visual representation of what our census has looked like last year throughout the different portions of our program. Top left, you look at the census for the inpatient portion. Bottom bar graph showcases the census of what our reintegration facilities were running at, and the top right reflects the ones that were on conditional release for last year. The table to the far right showcases some of the success we've been starting to reach with the program. 2023, we had a total of 4 residents that completely discharged from the program. At this point in time, we have up to 3 residents who could potentially total discharge for 2024. So we are seeing some movement with that. I'm now going to transition into the slide 20, which talks about recruiting and retention. As was mentioned, we try to put our name out there anywhere and everywhere. All those social platforms that grab people's attention, we are jumping into. We have the most success really with Indeed. We not only wait for people to pursue us, but we also pursue them. We're doing cold reach outs. We're paying the fees in order to get our hands on resumes to try to reach out to individuals, and not just in Kansas, but we've also reached outside of the state to try to see if we can entice people, especially in those license type roles. Additionally, we just revamped our Learner Cares website. You should visit it. It looks very sharp. It's a new way for individuals to learn about our facility and now be able to directly apply with us. And we in the Human Resources Department are prepared to very quickly respond to those applicants and do almost on-the-spot interviews, especially for those more direct care positions. We're also very involved with job fairs, continue to stick it through with those online job fairs when COVID was running, getting back into the face-to-face ones. We reach out and coordinate, like they said, technical colleges, community colleges. We do build a relationship and reach out to the high schools for anyone who is graduating and might be interested in doing some of that kind of work. The slide additionally shows you a lot of the other streaming, Facebook ads. We really try to put ourselves anywhere and everywhere that we can for the opportunities that we have. Slide 21 continues with recruiting and retention. Some of the things I want to mention on the retention side, we continue to try to come up with creative recognition ways for our staff to showcase that appreciation. We have a very nice chunk of staff that have pushed through us in some really rough times with our shortages, and so we have a Shooting Star program, Employee of the Quarter. We continue to develop conferences. We are known for our annual mental health conference, but we're also looking to expand and do a nursing medical type conference and also support services type training so that professional growth and development can continue for our employees that we have. I've continued to develop other recognitions for copying friendly for staff who have come in new and have welcomed our agency, and state staff are getting adapted to the environment, and just other ways to showcase appreciation with them, and that seemed to be being well received. Going into slide 22, we'll jump into the SSP mobile competency. Anyone and everyone who comes through as a referral for SSP is evaluated for mobile competency services to see if we can go ahead and provide that outpatient intervention. With the changes in the statute allowing professionals outside of Lawrence State Hospital to also provide some of those services if they have the proper education and training, we've been really trying to collaborate and inform people that that exists now, and that some of our community mental health providers can also jump on board and give us some extra support in trying to get some of these evaluations and these restoration services done in their community areas. That continues to be an ongoing process of helping people understand that that has occurred and existed. Additionally, with our outpatient services, we have a remote clinician. She goes throughout some of the eastern counties within the state and provides some of those outpatient restoration services and competency evaluations. You will see on the slide 23 what we were able to produce as far as our outpatient services, both with the evaluations on the left-hand side and then the number of patients on the right-hand side that were able to receive some of those restoration care. Going into slide 24, again, those agency staff for nursing are highly dependent on for us to provide that direct care staff, that direct care to our patients. You'll see there that our percentages and vacancy rates for each of the programs are sitting around the 60s for vacancies that we have. We have a weekly meeting where myself, the CFO, and the nursing leadership monitor very closely what our FTE numbers look like, what our agency numbers look like, and how many to bring on that is operationally needed but also financially responsible. These tables give you a quick screenshot of kind of what we're looking at from our very last meeting we held in 2023. The left-hand side table reflects ideally the numbers we need in each of those nursing positions to really operate as effectively as we would like to. On the right-hand side, that gives you just a quick glimpse of that December day where we were sitting at that number of FTEs for our license and MHEDs. The second column, you'll see how many agency staff we had on the books at that point in time, and that takes you to our totals. And you can see from those totals there, compared to that left-hand table, we still have a difference or still falling short. So we rely on voluntary overtime from state and agency. We rely on mandates where people have to could stay later and work 12 or 16-hour shifts. We also rely on anyone who does non-nursing volunteer, who may work another position throughout the 8 to 5 time, but will volunteer to work 4 hours here, 8 hours there throughout the evenings and weekends. So that's what we're currently doing to try to supplement that. Going into slide 25, I wanted to expand a little bit more too, because I've tried to talk a lot with our recruiter on what are some other things that are falling short of us being able to bring nursing staff in as FTEs, because every time I attend a new employee group Monday morning, every time we always have multiple staff that are coming back to LSH, whether they're state returning back or they're agencies. So I know we have a good hospital and a good team there that individuals are drawn to. But some of the challenges that we face with getting FTEs filled for the hospital is that the pay that they can make compared to what they can get in other jobs around us is about the same. And with our facility, we're working with a very challenging psychiatric group of individuals. We have, very challenging behaviors with the sexual predator population. We also have, of course, highly aggressive individuals, and we have had assaults, and we've had batteries and things happen to patient staff type stuff. So that's a challenge, is to bring people in and to feel comfortable and want to work for that pay in those types of settings. Geographically, that continues to be a challenge being in Larned, Kansas. Hard to get people to come out and live in that area. And the last thing that I feel pretty good that we are making improvement with it, but because we've been going through staffing shortages for so many years, I do feel like we hit a wall of where the work-life balance was not good for some of our direct care staff. And I think, so to speak, there's a little bit of PTSD from some of our staff. And so they are tired, and they are trying to bounce back from having to put in all these amount of hours that we've needed them to hang in there to keep this place going. And so I feel like we're in a better place. The culture, the mentality, and all that seems to be going in a better direction. But again, those memories of where we've been years ago are still real, and they're vulnerable in that sense. So I wanted to add that stuff in for you guys to consider there. Going to slide 26, again, continuing with the significant changes in the approved budget, that 24/7 pay plan is associated with that. I will say I do think that certainly makes a difference with staff coming to work. When staff miss out on some hours, they can tell a difference of what that pay differential makes, and I've had people very much bring that up. So I do appreciate that funding there, because that certainly helps get some people to work when they otherwise might not have came. Additionally, looking at the increased SPTP expenses related to the medical costs, and then lastly, just highlighting the inflation costs, naturally, that we've had to cover for just the operations of the hospital. Going into slide 27, again, reflecting the supplementals that have already been brought up, that shortfall we're requesting to cover the rest of that fiscal year 24 pay plan. Additionally, requesting the funds that are going to help us with covering the agency costs to maintain those operations there. Finally, going into slide 28, highlighting those enhancements in the governor's budget, the forensic evaluator. I know that was hit on by one of the other presenters, but just wanted to highlight just the positive response we've had from residents willing to engage in their actual evaluations. And although that is wonderful and great and glad to get their commitment, makes it hard for one person to get 283 evaluations done in a year. So having another person to help split that up would be wonderful. And then finally, highlighting again those environmental service staff that was mentioned to a little bit. Because of security concerns of where some of SPTP goes, having 4 more ES staff would very much help us with the SPTP buildings. As far as those 2 staff for the grounds upkeep, historically KDOC had assigned inmates to help us cover those areas there. That hasn't unfortunately happened for several years now, and so we've had to basically cover all those buildings on campus with half the man and woman power, so just requesting a little help to assist with that. And then those last few slides just reflect the performance-based budgeting data that I'll let you look at your convenience, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee, questions? Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what is the base rate for an MHDD now?
Say that one more time.
The base rate for an MHDD?
MHD base rate is around $17.79.
Just base, and then 24/7 is on top of that. And what's the most they can make on a night shift? $250?
Yeah, they have a differential added in for not only the shift that they're working, and then, of course, the differential we have for the 24/7 facility and the vacancies being the way they are. So you're adding over $4 into their base rate.
So 21 bucks an hour, but roughly. And
Yep.
so just committee, these guys are doing as well as they can possibly do under the circumstances. We've put probably $100 million in these hospitals and wages over the last 4 years, trying to get, and you know, what's sad about it is and we ran into that at the El Dorado Correctional Facility when we were low on staff. So when people are working 16-hour days and they're home 8, that's not much of a lifestyle. And they're sleeping when they're home, and it's hard on families. It's just terrible. And so you end up you lose more people doing that, and you can't ever get ahead of the game. And hats off to what you're doing. I know you guys are out there every day trying to get folks in there. It's a tough situation. I have no idea how to fix it.
Thank you.
Representative Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Just to follow up with what Representative Carpenter had mentioned in regards to the environment per se, with respect to the agencies you guys are hiring for the staffing, do these agencies offer benefits to those contract nurses?
It depends on the contract. When we first started having agency staff come, there wasn't benefits connected to them, but I've heard that that's been shifting where some agencies are now starting to offer benefits. So it's just dependent on the particular agency.
You talked about, if I can follow up. Yeah, because you did mention that some employees do suffer from PTSD. PTSD, is that correct? So I wanted to be sure if they have the insurance to make sure that they're getting treated as employees and all that. So do you know if the agencies that are hiring these nurses, if they offer those type of benefits too?
Absolutely. We also provide resources. We have EAP, the Employee Assistance Program that we offer up for the state, but because the agency are not covered through the state benefits in that, we also have several different handouts and resources to link them to local providers within a 60 to 90 mile radius. So we're definitely trying to get out that education and information to help them because it can be very emotionally draining and challenging. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you. I'll follow up on that. You've mentioned, direct care workers and all of them having it, but I've also learned that exempt staff, has to put in so many more hours too. So I wouldn't want you to be left out of that one because you have your direct care, but then you have to be there too, because if you can't get someone else to come in, someone has to be there and everything else. So that's more added in terms of that, which I think you should be applauded for, because you don't get anything really extra other than maybe you could adjust your time. But it is your job. It has to happen. If no one's there, you can't leave a patient without having the help that it is. So it's a recognized problem that it's a workforce shortage everywhere.
I have some very amazing staff. Very amazing.
And I think you've mentioned that too. And what I've said, you've covered almost everything. If you would say, well, did you try this? And I was just checking right here as you were going. You've tried that, you've tried that, you've tried that, you've tried that. And if you weren't doing all these things, you would be in worse shape than you are now. So I say thank you so much for just trying to make it work. And, it's not that we're putting the pressure on you. It's sort of like we're running the service and we have to do it.
Absolutely.
And the only way we can do it is either through contract labor if you can't find it, or whatever, because they need to have that service. And at some point, you have to feel good about what you're doing too, and that you're making a difference. And if you're tired and overworked, then, I don't know how we can help you, because there's no one to fill in for you at that point unless you fill in for each other. So just know that we recognize that is a huge problem. And we thank you for your efforts and keep it up.
Yeah, definitely. I can speak on behalf of all of LSH administration, direct care, everyone. We really appreciate that a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Clifford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You might know that my district ends at 160th Avenue, so just to the west of the hospital, but I certainly consider it to be in my district. So I would like a tour if you would connect with me after. For the 2025 year, you recommended a primary medical care staff. How is that being done now?
We have a wonderful chief medical officer that has had some very nice connections with different medical professionals across the state and has been able to bring in some medical providers to pay. We haven't had to recently here use as much contract for the medical because we've been able to get them to come in directly through the hospital. And we were able to just with our own current budget, go ahead and cover that within itself to bring in the most recent psych APRN that we have starting here soon. So.
And this is for APRN or for a physician, this ask for 2025? Whoever you can get?
Truly, yes. Truly, yes. And honestly, we, for our state hospital, I think Osawatomie is starting to do it as well, but we've had more success bringing in APRNs lately here. So we've been taking advantage of that just because the expansion of what their licenses have allowed them to do. So we typically go more in the direction of physician, but if we are not having success and we do have an APRN, we certainly open the doors for that, those individuals as well.
Could you make the case to Mr. Bruner, who would make the case to the governor, that you're you're sending these folks out to the community at great cost? I'm sure you know that number. So having somebody in-house would be, I mean, there are advantages, but is there cost savings then? Have someone in-house?
Yep.
Let's get together. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Representative Barth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you both for your presentations on this. I basically have the Osawatomie location in my district as well, so your services are appreciated. I know we went through a lot of extensive stuff last year, and remember we tried to do some things to help. Obviously, there is an industry issue with getting the folks there. I think it's not helping us with the wait list, and I have a question here. I can't find the number, though, of how many patients are on the wait list.
For SSP?
Well, any wait. So there's the two wait lists.
Yeah, so
Tell me again, because what they are, because I have the question, but not the number written here.
So I would have to get the exact number because it literally changes day to day, and we have pending admissions for.
What's the range? Is it? I heard 500 or so earlier is what I think I heard.
500 is definitely not the right number. Average for last year was at 184, so I think we're right around that number now. Oh, I just did the review to Dr. Dixon, but I can get the official number. But it's certainly within probably the 175 to 185 range right now for SSP.
And is that total for the two, or okay?
Yep.
So you said I had that 46% of the time they're on the wait list was the number you gave.
Yep, that would be for the different program.
Okay, and then of those patients, like where are they right now if they're on the wait list? Can you tell us what's going on? I know you gave us the counties, but like are they in prison, jail? Like where are those patients physically at right now?
So SSP, the ones that are coming in for those criminal assessments and that, a lot of those are sitting in jail. Some might be on bond. That's where those individuals are coming from before they come to us most often. The 46% being on the wait list was for the PSP program. That one, those individuals may be in emergency rooms, or I know we've had some that have been temporarily housed in hotels where they're being monitored until they can screen in. That's the setting where they typically come before they arrive for the PSP program.
Okay. And I just want to kind of add on to that as well. I don't know, I think we all basically got an email about a person that's been on the wait list for 610 days. And so I know that's a long time. The person's obviously in jail for a reason. There's a mental health issue in need that's extreme. And so I know it seems like the issue is that, and I think we talked about this last year, is the competency piece, right? Like they can't even get the assessment in order to even get to the hospital if there was room, because there's an issue with getting the competencies. So, and maybe I missed a little bit more of information on that, but can you just give us a little bit of an update specifically to that issue?
Sure. Well, when the individuals screen in, I mean, some of them will screen in for the competency evaluation piece, and at the point that they're evaluated, if they are not deemed competent, that often turns in then to a competency restoration case, where we then transition over and provide those services to try to get them competent. So that process is ongoing. Everyone that comes in, we try to evaluate whether they can be served in the community so that we can try to get their either their evaluation or their restoration completed. We also have a more vulnerable unit for individuals to go for competency restoration or evaluations, and one that has more aggressors and higher risk. And so we have to be very conscientious of who we screen into what unit based on that. So we continuously monitor the wait list to see who's most appropriate for which of those units there. So those are kind of those weekly continuous discussions that we're having to try to tweak and get people through. We have a better success with the female wait list, just with the numbers that come through.
Is there do you have personal recommendations that are not on here that you think would solve this problem because it's not going away? And other than just staffing, is there anything else that we haven't thought of, or just ideas that you have that you think would even be creative to some extent to address this problem? Thanks.
Big question with many layers. If I could have tons of units with lots of clinicians, the lack of resources is just what hurts us. So, yeah, it's a big problem. It's a big challenge.
Representative Clifford.
Sorry, thank you for another opportunity. So are the CCBHCs able to do the competency evals? Because I don't see too many on the mobile side. So are you getting help from like Lisa Southern at Compass to get folks out of Finney County Jail, or?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Bruner. So we can bring you some more information tomorrow about the progress we've made working with the mental health centers around the state for them to be able to do evaluations in jails, working with their courts there. And we've got a pretty good story to tell about, we've got a contract with the Mental Health Center Association to be able to fund those evaluations as well. So we can bring you those numbers in tomorrow as part of that further discussion, both for evaluation, and they are starting to do some restoration as well in some pilot counties where they've got good relationships with jails and identifying defendants that would be good for competency restoration, don't necessarily need to come all the way to Larned to get it, and then they're providing that in the jails. It's small, but we're making progress on that. In particular, Shawnee County, Douglas County, Wyandotte County, a little bit into Sedgwick County as well. So where there's a big concentration of defendants to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Carpenter.
And so you have a unit closed out there at Larned because of staffing?
Yes,
Okay. And how many beds is that?
it's a 30-bed.
30 beds? Okay. And do you still have the one single person that's,
No, sir.
you do? You don't have her? Oh, very good. So the story behind that is one person was taking up an entire unit because she could not be controlled or any of that kind of stuff. So she's gone. So very good. Well,
She's not in our care any longer, Representative. But she's not at Larned any longer, no.
And I would just assume that the wing being closed has a lot to do with the wait list as well, right? Yeah, okay, all right.
It certainly doesn't help. Having that unit open would not, within itself, fix the wait list. It's going to take several years for us to be able to weigh that down, but that certainly would help. Having that unit open, as well as expanding the community mental health services that can be offered by those professionals in the community, and continue to grow the mobile competency, that is the key factors that would help us make some progress.
Committee, other questions? I think maybe we're ready to transition to Osh then, correct? Okay.
I'll step down and let Ashley Byram, the
Call
superintendent.
Ashley, welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ashley Byram. I'm the superintendent of Osawatomie State Hospital. Osawatomie State Hospital has served the city of Kansas for 157 years, which we celebrated earlier this year in November. We serve 45 counties in Kansas. We actually have 3 separate different branches within Osawatomie State Hospital. We have Adair Acute Care, which is our 60-bed certified CMS facility. Then we have our regular Osawatomie State Hospital, which we are licensed through KDH&E for 116 beds. Then we also have a residential facility, Myco House, which is part of the SBTP program. 45% of our patients served by OSH and 76% of our patients served by AAC present with co-occurring substance use disorders. Both of our hospitals currently have semi-private rooms, which does hinder our bed availability at times when patients come in and they might require a private room. Therefore, that will take 2 beds out of the count at that time. On slide 36, you'll see our admissions for the past calendar year for AAC. For the single counties, you can see that Johnson County is our largest county that admitted to AAC in the past calendar year at 279 individuals. Wyandotte was second with 136, and Sedgwick County was third with 72. For Osawatomie State Hospital, and I believe the slides are a little messed up on there, for slide 37, for the last calendar year, the 3 primary were Douglas County, which was 29 individuals. For Johnson County at second was 26, and Sedgwick County was third at 25. The next slide talks about our waiting list. Osawatomie State Hospital does have a continued wait list throughout the year. This shows you the whole calendar year of how we continue to wax and wane throughout the years, or the months. Right now, as of this morning, we had 20 individuals that were on the wait list. The next slide continues to talk about our wait list. You can see that we have continued to have a steady decline in our hours that individuals are waiting. This talks about including competency, because with including competency, it does take a little longer to get those individuals into the hospital. But for those that excluding competency, in December, our wait time was 47.91 hours. So we are trying to get those individuals in as soon as possible. But most of the time, those individuals are sitting in the ERs waiting to get in, or at the mental health center, or at a crisis center. Again, the next slide talks about our OSH waiting list. You can kind of see the number of individuals that we admitted per month off of that wait list. There are sometimes that individuals do drop off that wait list because they've been admitted to an SIA facility, or the hospital where they were at was able to safety plan them into the community. So not everybody that is on the wait list ends up being admitted to the hospital. On slide 41, it talks about AAC, which again is our acute 60-bed facility. In the past fiscal year, 2023, we admitted 1,032 patients. We discharged 1,029 with an average daily census of 11. For Osawatomie State Hospital, we admitted 183 individuals, discharged 177 with an average daily census of 196. And the reason why that is longer is due to our competency patients. Some things that we've really focused on for the agency in the past year is safety, to increase overall safety of our patients, our environment. We've really been involved in trying to get involved into our community, again, to increase community involvement, also to get our name out there in a positive light, to encourage individuals to come and work at the facility, which kind of goes into the recruitment and retention. We've been focusing on active treatment for both of our facilities. Earlier this year, we did have a pretty decline with our clinical therapists and social workers. So that did affect how we were providing active treatment to ensure that our patients are getting those assessments and individual and group therapy. We're also focusing on trauma-informed care. We're currently working with University Health, formerly known as Truman Behavioral Health Care, to bring trauma awareness to the hospital, but also to our staff. As Superintendent Dingle did mention, our staff do occur to deal with sometimes of aggressive situations, which can be traumatic for our staff. So trying to bring in trauma-informed awareness to our hospital. So not only are we providing those services to our patients, but to our staff. We've really been focusing on recruitment, retention. Our Human Resources Department has really been focusing on this. The governor's 24/7 pay plan with the base pay for licensed nursing staff with the market value increases has helped. Providing the pay differentials, which I know has already been talked about, to our hourly employees has significantly helped, but also helped with our call-ins. It's very interesting to see staff who would normally might have called in for a reason not being able to drive to work. They would normally call in, but now they're saying, oh no, I'm going to lose an extra $4 an hour, so I'm definitely going to find a way in. So that has been a huge help. We did hire a part-time position in our human resources to help with recruitment and interviews. There were many times that we would have some applicants, but we did not have enough staff in the human resources department to provide those interviews. So having that part-time position has really helped. We've really increased our attending of career job fairs. We've attended 14 in the past year. We've also collaborated with a couple of different colleges. Johnson County Community College, we've established connection to post current open positions on their website. They've also allowed us to come and speak at the community college about our different positions that we have here at the hospital. We're also working with several different nursing colleges to bring nursing clinicals back. So they're able to come to the state hospital to provide nursing clinicals. During that time, they also meet with our chief nursing officer to talk about the daily duties of an RN. They go out on the unit, able to speak to the nurses as well to see what their day-to-day is. We've been able to actually receive some applicants from that. We've also had some of our staff available to handle applications during those sessions. We're using a lot of the social platforms, LinkedIn, Kansas Work, Handshake. Indeed, again, is the primary one that we use. We're also not just waiting for applications, we're seeking them out. We've really revamped our Facebook page to try to get our names out there, talking about the different activities, events that we're doing at the hospital, trying to acknowledge what our employees are doing. We restarted high school tours, so the junior and senior psychology classes in many different areas are coming. They are meeting with different disciplines to find out what we do at the hospital. And we have some staff that started maybe in housekeeping and now they are an RN and they're able to see that progression. We're also working with other universities, KU, in regards to increasing our practicum intern students for social work, master's level psychology, and we're working on a postdoctoral resident right now. For retention, we have an employee appreciation committee that's doing a lot of great activities for our staff to acknowledge them, fun activities, carnivals, different things to get our staff involved. We're doing employee of the quarter, years of service. It is amazing to see how many employees we have that have worked at the hospital for 44 years, 30 years that are still working today. We're working on providing our clinicians some more continuing education courses. And also we're working with our nursing department on implementing more competency checklists so that they all feel more comfortable on the units. One big focus that we've had in the past 6 months is our security enhancements. We've implemented a new zone strategy for our safety and security officers so that not only are they patrolling the grounds to ensure the campus is safe, but also on the units. So each officer will be on the units 4.5 hours for their shift, which is an 8-hour shift. This, we have noticed, have decreased some aggression incidences, and the staff are feeling more safe on the units with them doing more rounds. We're also implementing more monthly trainings for our security officers and also training scenarios. We are working with a new schedule for our officers so that they'll be able to have more of that work-life balance. Our previous schedule did not allow for them to have a full weekend off for the first 6 weeks. So adjusting that schedule has been more helpful for them. Our acute unit also implemented this zone strategy for our techs. So not only does security come around and monitor those specific zones, but our nursing techs are also set in different areas so that we can ensure the patient safety for all patients. We've had some big remodels in the past year. Our Biddle remodel will open in April of this year. It's both east and west Biddle, so that will provide us with 42 single rooms. So that will really help with that, what I talked about earlier about having to share rooms. This will eliminate that process, so we'll have 42 single rooms available. We've also done continue some asphalt repairs as well. We've had to update some of our lift stations in our power plant and replace some fire panels. Also, I'm sure several of you have heard about some of our buildings. We did have to raise 2 of our buildings in the past year, so those have been completed. We continue to experience some issues with COVID. We did have a recent uptick recently and do have a couple units on quarantine at this time. Some significant changes in the approved budget. Again, due to inability to obtain applications for services, we're having to continue to use those staffing agencies. Not only are we doing them for nursing at Osawatomie State Hospital, we're having to use them for housekeeping services. And we recently also had to start using them for social work and for our master's level clinicians. So the governor's budget recommendation includes an additional $5 million from the state general fund for current year contract staffing costs, which also includes not just the nursing, but also for the housekeeping and social work services. And we do have another significant change is our reconstruction upgrade to our Biddle courtyard. So yes, we are redoing our Biddle building, but one thing that was not put in that initial scope of the work was the courtyard. For our patients that are on AAC, they're in an acute unit, therefore they're not able to leave the grounds at all to go to like the gym or to go to any otherwhere on campus. So they have to remain inside the hospital the entire time, which is not a very therapeutic environment. So with this Biddle, we're working on doing a Biddle remodel. There is a picture on slide 50 that kind of shows you that courtyard area. So this would give those 60 acute patients time to get out into the sunshine, get out in the courtyard. There are several different therapeutic activities that the activities department has put in there so that they're able to do some of those leisure activities and get some exercise as well. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Ashley? I'm seeing none.
All right, thank you.
Did a good job, apparently. Next testimony is presented by Amy Campbell from the Kansas Mental Health Coalition. Welcome, Amy.
It's not on, I'm sorry. So you have my testimony in front of you. I'm not going to read it. I want to hit some highlights. The Kansas Mental Health Coalition fully supports the requests that the agency put to the governor, and we support the recommendations that she has made. We are enthusiastically going to support when she comes back at governor's budget amendment time to fully fund the staffing needs that they have at the hospitals, which has been an annual event. Additionally, the comments that were just made about the remodel at Biddle, it's been a long time coming that those unit remodeling efforts have, we've been waiting a long time, right? So that's amazing that that has been completed. We enthusiastically support the changes to the courtyard. I can tell you that the last time I took a tour there, it's definitely a feeling when you're in that building that they need to be able to get outside. You need to create a therapeutic environment, a healing environment for folks. I wanted to comment on the fact that, you know, there were questions asked, and these are the right questions that you're asking about what can be done, right? Well, a lot of what can be done is being done in the KDAD's budget, not in this budget. So you have the state institutions alternatives beds. Don't forget those. Those are the contracts that Scott Bruner oversees with community hospitals to serve people who otherwise would go to a state hospital. That is an incredibly valuable resource. We'd be in miserable shape without those contracts. Additionally, the state institutions building fund that recommendations for continuing to raise buildings at your Osawatomie campus. I would also call attention to the fact that you have a majority of beds there that continue to be state licensed instead of certified. What does that mean? That means they're being fully funded by state general funds. You get no federal dollars for those, no CMS money. So at some point, we've got the Adair acute unit that is fully certified. At some point, we have to move on to fully certifying the entire hospital, and that will help the budget. At the end of the day, it's about what you do in community care. It's about supported housing. It's about outpatient treatment orders. It's about all of those services that the CCBHCs are going to be required to provide. Outreach into the community, active, assertive community treatment, mobile crisis response, and the mobile competency services that will directly slow down the number of people who need hospitalization. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Very well. Committee, questions for Amy? Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with your comments very much, especially alternative beds. We don't hear a lot about those alternative beds because it's the waiting list here and all this stuff, but those alternative beds, but the state's license, because when Osawatomie was closed for all that time, it was because we only had limited certified beds, but they eliminated those. So that meant instead of getting federally funding, we had to pick up that bill of SGF, the State General Fund, paying for everything, and that took so long. So once we had it open, you know, we still have to cater to those people, that's what court ordered and everything else for beds. And if we have vacancies, then they can come in voluntarily. Am I correct?
Right. So when you recertified, when you finally were able to recertify Osawatomie State Hospital, it's the Adair acute care unit that was recertified, fully CMS certified. The balance of the beds are state licensed, and that is all SGF money that you're funding those with.
That's the difference. If we could get more certified, but then you have to go through all the stuff we went through before in order to get those beds certified.
Right.
That
and
would
I want
help.
to commend you, too, on what you did for the South Central Hospital that is moving forward. I mean, that's going to have a huge impact as well once you get that hospital opened. So, I mean, there's a lot happening. You guys are doing a lot. These folks are just amazing every year when I listen to them. I think, where would we be without these kinds of state employees that are willing to do this job? So, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Committee, other questions? Representative Carpenter.
So we have about 400 SIA beds. So Scott, what is the daily rate we pay? Is it about 900, if I remember right, for contract beds it's higher than that now? Okay. And we have just a few involuntary? Do we have, that we didn't enter into that contract? Okay. All right, so we have these beds scattered all over for the benefit of the committee, scattered all over the state that we contract with local hospitals to take voluntary only, though. That's the whole key to it, is they're voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
Committee, other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, we'll continue this hearing tomorrow and we'll make our recommendations. And committee, with your permission, if there are no objections, Representative Ballard wanted to revisit the guardianship budget and make an addendum. So I will recognize her if there are no objections.
I didn't really want to do it while the executive director was in the room, but also I didn't want to get it with the budget, but it could be attached to it. I would like to move that the Social Services Budget Committee recognize M. Jean Cron for 40 years of outstanding service as Executive Director of the Kansas Guardianship Program, and congratulations on her retirement in June 2024.
I think we can make that a part of the budget recommendation. Is there a second? Representative Hobbs seconds that. Did you get that, Dayton? You got all that? Very good. Okay. All in favor of the Ballard motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, committee.